Welcome to Let the Quran Speak. I'm Sophia, your host. What impact does religion have on children? Mark Joseph Stern of Slate Magazine has written an article called Is Religion Good for Children? His piece critiques a number of studies that suggest that kids raised with religion are happier and have better self-control and discipline. Does religion contribute to a child's development and growth? Can it have a negative effect? Dr. Shabir Ali will share his insights. Dr. Shabir Ali, welcome to Let the Quran Speak.
My pleasure, as usual.
Now, I have a son myself. He's 1.5 years old. I'm raising him with religion, so I'd like to believe that religion is good for him and it will have a positive impact on him. But this article seems to suggest otherwise. What are your thoughts when you read it?
Well, that's not the last word on the question. An article published in USA Today, the American newspaper, by Eliyahu Fetterman, shows a different perspective. He draws on other studies, a study published in Psychology Today and other studies showing that in fact the religion does have a positive effect on children, and whereas the article that we're responding to claims that imaginative stories and stories regarding God and miracles of the past can have a detrimental effect on the critical thinking of children. Fetterman shows that in fact these other studies indicate that children benefit psychologically from being exposed to such stories. Their imaginative thinking increases greatly. They're able to picture incidents and imagine situations from distant lands, from different times, and this just increases their capacity to think.
Did you say anything about about the age at which children should, move beyond that sort of pretend play and understand the reality?
These studies, in fact, show that the development is natural. At a certain age, let's say about 3 years old, children have a sort of critical capacity, much more than we might imagine or expect. Later on, they may tend to believe things that their parents convince them about, or things for which they see some evidence. For example, if some parents go through the routines of helping their children to believe in Santa Claus, well, the children will think that they see evidence that Santa Claus exists because there are the toys being placed and they're given this narrative that makes this all meaningful. But eventually, about 9 years old, most children stop believing in Santa Claus. They then come to understand that their parents play a role in this, and Santa Claus does not actually exist as an individual. So things develop naturally in this way, but the question is, does teaching them religion at an early age hamper their critical ability to think forever? Mm-hmm. And the answer to that seems to be no. In fact, it helps them to develop psychologically.
And I believe even in this article itself, some experts were cited that said, well, there are certain things in our natural world that seem extraordinary themselves and hard to believe, but children have to believe them anyway. So, there's that aspect of it as well.
Yes, much of science, contrary to popular imagination, much of science is actually counterintuitive. So you cannot say because something looks like the way that because it's contrary to expectation, then it must be wrong, because a lot that is discovered in science is actually contrary to expectation. Mm-hmm. Counterintuitive is the way that this is being spoken about. But then there is the other greater set of benefits that accrue from religion. Some other studies have shown, as Fetterman pointed out, that children who are brought up on religion tend to have less stress, less anxiety. They are less likely to commit suicide. They are less likely to indulge in drinking and gambling and drugs and in dangerous forms of sex. Generally, religion helps children to make sense of the world and have a sense of purpose and direction and a goal-oriented life.
Mm-hmm. Now, Mark Stern interprets that as religion making children docile and obedient to authority. What are your thoughts on his claims?
Well, being too docile and being too obedient to authority without allowing some critical thinking to be engaged in the matter is obviously objectionable, but we all benefit from a society in which people do obey the laws, and we ourselves should be obedient and good citizens obeying the laws of our country and the situations in which we are. So there's nothing wrong with that. If religion teaches that, that is in fact better than anarchy and hooliganism, vandalism, and so on, which in fact can affect some kids. Especially if they are not given this kind of religious upbringing. We look at all of the drugs and crime and shootings, and we look at the deaths of young men, one after another, even in the Greater Toronto area, and we ask, wouldn't religion have saved these kids from this kind of negative outcome?
Do you think religion gives young children a moral imperative to be good?
Yes, definitely. Without religion, one wonders, like, what's the moral imperative? Why should I be good? What's there in a human being that differentiates us from other life forms around us? And when we look into the dark universe, we do not see any indication that there is some moral law written anywhere. Science proceeds without any discussion of moral law. Science can only explain to us how things work, not how things ought to work. So science can explain why human beings do certain things, but not what they ought to do. Science has no say in that matter at all. That comes from philosophy and from religion. So teaching children religion really helps them to have a sense of moral right and wrong. And you take religion out, people can make up their own morality if they want to. They can invent reasons to be good, but they don't have to. And religion says that you ought to, because God created you to be good, moral human beings.
Mm-hmm. Now, the article makes a suggestion that it's not that religion teaches self-control, but in fact there are certain kids who are more aligned, more have a sense of self-control anyway, and they're the ones who are more religious. What are your thoughts?
The article suggests that, okay, if you get children coming out well-behaved from church, then probably they were well-behaved before they went into church, and that's why they were the children who went to church, as opposed to the ones who could not be controlled, who would not sit still through a church service. So they were left behind. They did not go to church in the first place. But while that may be true to a certain extent, the greater effect that is noticed by many parents is that if they do take the children to worship services, then the children do come out better than they were before. And that is our common experience as well. You go into a worship service, you feel yourself connected with God, you come out of that feeling that you have to maintain that same feeling that you had there in the service when you were connected with God, and certainly if you do wrong things, then you start feeling that disconnect. It is in this vein that we understand the verse of the Quran which says, "Inna salata tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar." The prayer prohibits a person from evil and reprehensible deeds. What we understand from this verse of the Quran is that when you do pray, that gives you a sort of mindset such that when you come out of the prayer, you're still coming out with some effects of that mindset, and that mindset will prevent you from going into evil deeds and objectionable actions.
Mm-hmm. How important is it for children to have a sense of purpose?
It's very important. I spoke earlier about the possibility that children who are not schooled in religion may be more likely to commit suicide than children who are. Well, when one has a sense of purpose and direction in life, one knows that God has given us life for a reason, and we are to live out this life with patience in the face of suffering, with extra effort in the face of challenges, knowing that God is on our side and in our support, and that He will never give us situations that are too difficult for us to bear, knowing that we will overcome eventually on God's own timetable. We just have to persevere. All of these are aspects of a goal-oriented life, a purpose-driven existence, as opposed to, for example, thinking that this dark universe for no reason at all, just coughed us up into existence.
And we're just here by chance.
And we're just here by chance, and that eventually the same universe will swallow us up in a massive collision onto itself.
Do you think it's possible to teach young children a sense of purpose? For example, 3- or 4-year-olds?
Yeah, well, as much as they can understand, yes. Everything is made for a purpose. When they build something, they build it for a purpose, to enjoy, whether it is a sandcastle or whatever, they build it to enjoy it, or to show their skill. Well, God has created us for a purpose, and the purpose is for us to have a relationship with God forever. As we love our moms and dads, we also love God, who created us and created all moms and dads. And that sense of purpose can be registered with children and will have lasting effects for them throughout their lives.
Dr. Shabir, how can we avoid the negative effects that religion can have on a child?
Well, one of the negative effects that is mentioned in that article to which we're responding is that children may, in fact, be more susceptible to believing in stories which are of a miraculous nature, even if they are not coming from within religion. And naturally, when religion is taught to children, all of the miracle stories from the Bible and from the Quran and from sacred scripture may be imparted to the children, and they may tend to expect that such stories can happen again and again. Why should they be restricted only to the Bible or the Quran? The answer to that, as adults will come to understand, is that this is a situation, like the miracle stories which are there in the scriptures, are situations in which God specifically intervened to make it happen so, and we shouldn't expect that God is going to do that all of the time in every and sundry way. We should expect that most things flow according to cause and effect, as we study in science. So adults, children becoming adults, naturally grow out of that state of thinking about things as occurring in a magical or mysterious way, or by supernatural invention. Yet it is also possible that some adults may live on with this kind of unscientific thinking. And it is interesting in this respect that when we turn to the Quran, we see that the Quran does not stress the miraculous so much, but stresses that things occur through processes, and God is behind all of these processes. So God works in little things, not only in big floods or massive earthquakes.
All right, thank you for that, Dr. Shabir Ali.
You're welcome.
We'll take a break. When we return, how do we respond to the suffering of Muslims all over the world?